In the series of lectures on anemia with liver patients, uh, today's topic is approach to chronic anemia in liver diseases. So the spectrum of anemia and sparsal anemia have already been covered. There are many more to cover. I'll try to not to overlap too much with the other lectures so that I'll focus on my own topic. So the connection between hepatology and hematology is prenatal, intrauterine. So liver being the major site of hematopoiesis, it's also a major site of thrombopoietin and erythropoietin production in the prenatal time, and postnatally still a major site for thrombopoietin production and major extrarenal site for erythropoietin production. 10% of the erythropoietin is even in adults postnatally is produced by the liver, and it stores iron, B12, folate. It synthesizes transferrin, hepcidin. So the liver has a lot of strong connection with hematology, like bone marrow. And does it really matter, anemia in liver diseases? So nearly 2/3 to 3/4 of the patients with chronic liver disease have anemia, defined by hemoglobin less than 12 grams. And presence of anemia worsens the hyperdynamic state and coagulation disturbances in patients with liver diseases. And severity of anemia is also closely associated with the liver dysfunction. As you can see here, the as anemia worsens, the HVPG worsens, the hepatic decompensation worsens as the anemia worsens, and liver-related mortality also worsens as the anemia worsens. So anemia in a cirrhotic is has a worse clinical outcome with worsened decompensation, need for hospitalization, poor post-transplant survival, and increased overall liver and non-liver mortalities in patients with liver diseases. Anemia and cirrhosis is a bad combination. So I'll start with how our topic today is approaching the anemia, chronic anemia in a liver patient. So we should always start with the history and examination. Chronic anemia is rarely symptomatic in cirrhotic patients on account of very high peripheral oxygen extraction due to, if you remember the oxygen dissociation curve, there is shift to right due to increase in 2,3-DPG levels and acidosis in the peripheries. So, so the patients will not be symptomatic in chronic anemia. And the prevalence of anemia is so high in liver diseases, so every liver disease patient should be deemed to have anemia unless proven otherwise. So we should have careful history concerning to, I'll quickly go through this slide, concerning to the blood loss, like history of epistaxis, spontaneous bleeds, bleeding per rectum or easy bruisability, sampling site contusions, excessive bleed, the bleeding tendencies, and the history suggestive of hemolysis, like dark colored urine, joint pains, backache, or history of gallstones, history suggestive of hypersplenism, petechiae, rashes, history suggestive of coagulopathy, and non-specific symptoms like poor oral intake, anorexia, weight loss, pounding heart rate, pre-syncope or syncope, and personal history of alcoholism, or whether the patient is a vegan or vegetarian, and history of blood losses or history of blood transfusions, prior presence of comorbidities like chronic kidney disease, thalassemia, celiac disease, or PNH, or malignancies, or smoking history. And coming to the examination, we should confirm all the findings of the history on examination with presence of raised JVP, hyperdynamic circulation, tachycardia, mucosal bleeds, flat koilonychia, lymphadenopathy, splenomegaly, PR examination to rule out the hemorrhoids or fissure. So the critical elements of erythropoiesis are the physiologically the RBC production is regulated by the tissue oxygen tension. When the tissue oxygen tension in the pericapillary lining cells of the peritubular capillaries of the renal vessels goes down, the erythropoietin is released. This erythropoietin increases the multiplication of the erythroid precursors in the bone marrow in the presence of sufficient metabolites like iron, folic acid, B12. The red cell mass is produced, and this is closely monitored by the level is managed by the red cell destruction and the plasma volume that decides the Hb concentration at the end, which again decides the oxygen tension. So problem anywhere, a defect any of these components can lead to anemia. So the critical elements are erythropoiesis, availability of the iron, proliferative capacity of the bone marrow, and effective maturation of the red cell precursors. This is how we will be classifying the anemia in further slides, so that the functional classification is more easy to adhere to or follow. So the workup, coming to the workup of anemia, reviewing the old records is very important, since how long the anemia has been there, what is the baseline hemoglobin, and that is very important. By definition, men below 13 gram, women below 12 gram qualify to be anemic, and hemoglobin or hematocrit will be the first test. As I said, the functional classification, first group is decreased red cell survival. It can be either due to blood loss or hemolysis. And red cell maturation defects, it is ineffective erythropoiesis, is the second group. Third group is marrow production defects, that is hypoproliferation. So next test we'll order is the reticulocyte index. So before going into the causes of the reticulocyte, high reticulocyte causes, we'll understand what is the reticulocyte index. Normally, the reticulocyte count constitutes around 1 to 2% of the RBCs, and which replaces the 0.8 to 1% of the circulating population. The correction is done. Actually, the precursors of the RBCs. This is the only reticulocyte is the only RBC which is released into the peripheral blood. Rest of them all are in the bone marrow. This is characterized by a larger volume of the RBC and presence of this RNA remnants. This constitutes the reticulocyte. So reticulocyte count what we receive in our lab is the correct reticulocyte count. The first one is the corrected for anemia, because proportion of the reticulocytes goes up with anemia. Number of reticulocytes remains same, but RBC number goes down. So for correction for the anemia, correcting for the anemia is the first step, and that is called corrected reticulocyte count. And second correction is for the premature erythrocytes to remain in the peripheral blood for 2 days, 36 to 48 hours. So divided by 2 on the reticulocyte, corrected reticulocyte count gives us the reticulocyte index. That is what our lab is reporting to us. If the actual reticulocyte count is 9, we will be getting corrected reticulocyte index as 2.25%, for example. So the ILBS reports reticulocyte index as in the report. We should be aware of this. So patients with high reticulocyte index have most commonly hemolysis. Chronic subacute hemorrhage can also lead to raised reticulocyte index, but most commonly hemolysis. Hemolytic anemia is a little rare in liver disease patients, although it can happen. Concerning liver patients, concerning to liver diseases, patients can have intravascular hemolysis, like in PNH related with the HbO-TiO. It can be present along with HbO-TiO patients. In patients with pregnancy, hemolysis can be associated with HELLP syndrome or AFLP. Spirocytes, Spur cells, Zeev syndrome can present with hemolysis. Hemoglobinopathies like sickle thalassemia, although they are rare. Immune destruction, autoimmune hemolytic anemia, which is going to be covered by Dr. Anirudh later. And fragmentation or hemolysis, especially in the post-TIPS patient, when the RBCs pass through the stent, they can hemolyze and they can become fragmented. Subacute blood loss, this is important because when a patient presents with acute bleed, the reticulocytes count will be normal. In chronic bleed, they will have low iron and they will end up in developing iron deficiency anemia. In patients who are recovering from acute bleed, they can have high reticulocyte count, that is called subacute bleed. But otherwise, hemolytic anemia is rare. The presentations will be very dramatic, and but we should be aware and knowing when the reticulocyte count is very high. And next test to be ordered is the peripheral smear, which gives us a different variety of cells which can help us in identifying the etiology, like spirocytes, elliptocytes, hypochromic microcytic cells, teardrop cells suggestive of myelodysplasia, basophilic stippling, acanthocytes covered last week, target cells suggestive of thalassemia. So peripheral smear is an important next step after the reticulocyte count. And next we should look at RBC indices, MCV, mean corpuscular volume, MCH, MCHC, and REW. We all are aware of it, and we do it every day. We do see it every day. Low MCV is microcytic hypochromic, below 80. Above 100 is macrocytic hypochromic. So MCH is rarely used. MCHC, this is important because in a patient with a low MCV, if MCHC is normal, mean corpuscular hemoglobin concentration is normal in a patient with low MCV, we should suspect thalassemia or other things rather than iron deficiency. And coming to red cell distribution width, this is when this is high, above the upper limit of normal, is abnormal. It tells us about the variance of the RBC sizes, be it microcytic or be it macrocytic. So RDW tells us the variance. So always the upper limit, above the upper limit is abnormal. Below the lower limit has no sense. So next, we will, after looking at the MCV, we in a patient with low reticulocyte index, we divide the anemic patients into either normochromic normocytic or micro or macrocytic, based on in the low reticulocyte group, based on the cell morphology. In the micro or macrocytic, they are due to basically the maturation disorder. Firstly, the cytoplasmic defects like heme synthesis or globin synthesis, iron deficiency, thalassemia or cytoblastic anemia. Iron deficiency, the next lecture is on how to assess the iron indices in liver patients. So a couple of points here to take home is serum ferritin level when in male should be at least 100 microgram, which is representative of total body stores of 1 gram of iron. If it is in female, it is 30 microgram, which is representative of 300 milligrams of total stores of iron. When serum ferritin is less than 15 or 20 microgram, it suggests severe depletion of stores. In some patients with liver disease, the ferritin is abnormally high. Abnormally high can be because of the acute phase reaction. So in a patient with high ferritin, if it is more than 200, the chances of iron deficiency in such a patient is very low. Irrespective of the serum iron or other levels, the chances of iron stores are very low when the ferritin level is about 200. And nuclear defects, as I said, folate deficiency, nuclear maturation is delayed, so the cells are little larger, and megaloblastic anemia or macrocytic anemia, folate deficiency or B12 deficiency, drugs which like methotrexate or antimetabolites, alkylating agents. Alcohol use can lead to B12 deficiency. Even hypothyroidism can delay the nuclear maturation in the precursors in the bone marrow. This should be considered in patients with high MCV, low reticulocyte index anemia. So iron deficiency anemia in liver disease, a couple of slides on this, because this is the most common type of anemia we see in cirrhotic patients. Nearly half of the anemic patients with liver disease have iron deficiency. Usually the chronic hemorrhage into the GI tract is the most common cause of anemia in cirrhotic with moderately severe anemia. Moderately severe is less than 10 grams. And any source of chronic mucosal blood loss, from epistaxis to the hemorrhoids or fissure, lower GI bleed, like even portal hypertensive gastropathy, gastric antral vascular ectasias, enteropathies with multiple AVMs throughout the small bowel, or even the colopathy, AVMs or submucosal bleeds in colon. This can all lead to chronic blood loss daily amounting to 10 to 15 ml, sometimes 20 ml per day. They can end up in developing chronic iron deficiency blood loss anemia. And in patients with IgA nephropathy also, rarely chronic blood loss through urine can also be. So our approach should be to evaluate any source for GI loss of blood, mucosal or loss of blood. That includes endoscopy, colonoscopy, capsule endoscopy in certain patients, and urine for active sediments or dysmorphic anemias. Stool for occult blood is not indicated in liver patients. It is always positive. It has no meaning in liver patients. So next in the list is normocytic normochromic anemia. This constitutes the second most common group of patients of anemia in liver patients, and even otherwise. They come under hypoproliferative. They are anemic with low reticulocyte index and with normocytic normochromic, that is MCV between 80 and 100, and they are hypoproliferative anemia without any. And even in this group, they can have, this is the difficult group to assess and evaluate, because there can be combination of other two. There can be some component of hemolysis, some component of iron deficiency, some component of B12 deficiency, multiple permutations, combinations. Additionally, we should also be ruling out infiltrative bone marrow diseases or bone marrow fibrosis, aplasia, pure red cell aplasia, which is also common in liver patients, and especially patients with viral hepatitis can have bone marrow suppression in 1 in 1000, 0.01% of the patients. Iron deficiency can also be associated, and there is something called anemia of chronic disease or anemia of inflammation. That is most likely due to chronic inflammation leading to reduced responsiveness of the bone marrow to the erythropoietin, even though the iron stores are normal. So that is due to the inflammation itself, and like we see in the chronic kidney disease or rheumatoid arthritis. Similarly, even in liver patients, it is known to have they are known to have anemia of chronic disease. I'll come to that one by one. So this is more challenging, as I said. Multiple causes B12 and iron can be present, and we should rule out other causes like hypothyroidism, androgen deficiency, cancer-associated anemias, CKDs, and early blood loss, especially immediately after they bleed, they can have normocytic, normochromic. This is most likely due to the combination of various things, like as I said, intravascular dilution due to volume overload, increased RBC destruction due to the membrane defects or anything, and impaired bone marrow compensatory response can lead to normocytic, normochromic anemia in liver disease patients. So, couple of slides on the pathophysiology of anemia of chronic disease, because this I thought was interesting to share. It is diagnosed by the presence of diagnostic parameters are normal total iron binding capacity. TIBC represents the transferrin levels in the blood and capacity of the transferrin to attach to the iron. Despite low serum iron, the TIBC is normal. Normally in iron deficiency anemia, whenever there is low iron, the TIBC levels go up because there is increased capacity of the transferrin to attach to the iron. So this is the pathognomonic finding of anemia of chronic diseases. T saturations will be low, serum ferritin will be normal or high. So this happens because in non-liver patients, hepcidin is thought to be the center of cause for the anemia of chronic liver disease. The function of hepcidin, in simple words, is to decrease the serum levels of transferrin or iron levels. Free iron levels are reduced by hepcidin because increased iron levels in the blood can be toxic. It can cause oxidative damage, and the infections can increase in presence of increased iron levels in inflammatory states. Because the microbes, the bacteria use the iron for their multiplication. So what hepcidin does, in acute phase reaction, the hepcidin levels are normally elevated. This hepcidin blocks the entry of iron into the plasma, either from the enterocyte or from the reticuloendothelial cells. So the iron is internalized into the enterocytes or internalized into the reticuloendothelial cells, and they are not allowed to enter into the this happens through divalent DMT1 receptor internalization and lysis of the iron inside the cells of reticuloendothelial cells, and so in these conditions we see increased levels of iron stores in the bone marrow, reticuloendothelial cells, and as well as the enterocytes. So the hepcidin is normally in other anemia of chronic diseases, hepcidin is elevated, and there is also inappropriate erythropoietin production. So erythropoietin levels are, even in liver disease patients, it has been shown that the erythropoietin levels are increased, but its effect on the bone marrow precursor cells is decreased because of the decreased receptors of the erythropoietin on the pre-RBCs, precursors of the RBCs in the bone marrow. And the inflammation also causes decrease of the reduced erythropoiesis by itself. Additionally, many etiologies, as I said, the alcoholic liver disease directly inhibits the bone marrow and causes anemia of chronic disease. Anemia of chronic diseases, one more slide on this. The present with usually hemoglobin of 10 to 11 or a minimum of 8 milligrams, normocytic, normochromic. Iron studies, the one which differentiates the anemia of chronic inflammation from iron deficiency is reduced TIBC irrespective of the low serum iron levels, and increased or normal serum ferritin levels is the pathognomonic, as I said. And bone marrow, although is not essential, if done, shows increased iron stores in the bone marrow. Iron stores are normal, despite that there is anemia. And the serum hepcidin levels are not mandatory. In liver disease patients, it is known that the hepcidin level goes down. In chronic liver, in anemia of chronic inflammation in other diseases, hepcidin levels goes up. This is something which was which is controversial to and difficult to conceptualize. Hepcidin levels, lower hepcidin levels, also associated with increased mortality in liver disease patients. It is associated with advanced liver disease, advanced fibrosis, even HCC. Lower the hepcidin levels, higher the liver disease severity in patients with liver disease. So in liver disease patients, anemia of chronic inflammation is associated with low hepcidin and high erythropoietin, reduced response from the bone marrow, high serum ferritin, and low TIBC. This is pathognomonic anemia of, in liver disease, chronic anemia in liver disease. And serum erythropoietin levels are shown to be high. And one more thing is serum transferrin receptor is increased in iron deficiency anemia, but not in anemia of chronic inflammation. To understand what is serum transferrin receptor, usually this corresponds to the number of receptors, transferrin receptors available in the precursors of RBC in the bone marrow. For every receptor present on the membrane of the precursors of RBC in the bone marrow, there is one serum transferrin, soluble transferrin receptor. So soluble transferrin receptors is increased in patients with iron deficiency so that more iron is delivered into the bone marrow. But in anemia of chronic disease, the soluble transferrin receptors is low, suggesting that reduced number of receptors of transferrin on the precursors of RBC, which is also responsible for anemia in chronic liver diseases. So this one slide I like. This is I have taken from the CKD data. This is like if the serum ferritin level is below 30, it is invariably iron deficiency, be it whatever chronic inflammatory disease. When it is between, when the serum ferritin is between 30 to 200 and the transferrin is low, iron deficiency is most likely. Ferritin is less than 200 and transferrin saturation is less than 20. Beyond ferritin 200, then the if the iron transferrin saturation is low, this is combination of both iron deficiency and as well as the chronic inflammation. When transferrin saturation is above 20 and ferritin is low, this is possibly again inflammatory immune mediated iron deficiency plus immune mediated. So very low ferritin, we should even in chronic inflammation, we should suspect iron deficiency. There can be a combination. So next in the workup list, we will be looking at white blood cells and platelets to look at the assess for pancytopenia. We have some sessions on hypersplenism and splenic artery embolization. Hypersplenism is usually due to sequestration and destruction of the white blood cells, platelets, and RBCs in the spleen. And usually the patients will have a macrocytosis. MCV is usually higher than 105. Other differentials will be HLH, which should be covered later in the coming sessions. Viral hepatitis, hepatitis C and hepatitis B can have pancytopenia by directly bone marrow suppression. And thrombotic macroangiopathies, which we listened to last week, can also have pancytopenia. Autoimmune cytopenias can also present with pancytopenias. These can all be associated with liver disease more than normal individuals. So these things should be in mind whenever we approach a patient with anemia. Is it only hemoglobin low or is it pancytopenia? That is how we will be able to more concentrate on the etiology. And bone marrow examination, there is a separate lecture by Dr. Chagan on this, but only one slide on this. When should we be doing a bone marrow biopsy in liver patients with anemia? In patients with hypoproliferative anemia, that is retic count less than 2 or 2.5, with normocytic normochromic, with normal iron profile. Normal iron profile, hypoproliferative anemias, bone marrow should be done. And what we see in hypoproliferative, reduced myeloid erythroid ratio. Normally, myeloid erythroid ratio is 2 to 3:1. Myeloid cells are little higher. In hyperproliferative anemia, again, myeloid erythroid cells go up and the ME ratio will go down. So, in hyperproliferative anemia with normal iron, we should look at, we should rule out myelofibrosis, red cell maturation defect, or infiltrative diseases of the bone marrow. So this will be the final flow chart for the how we approach a patient with liver disease with anemia. CBC reticulocyte count, reticulocyte index, high index, low index. High index is most likely hemolysis, usually have usually more of acute presentation, but they can have some chronic anemia like presentations as well in spur cell scans. And if the retic index is less than 2.5, we should look at the MCV. It is normocytic, normochromic, or micro-macrocytic. Micro-macrocytic will have maturation disorder, cytoplasmic defects, or nuclear defects. Accordingly, we should work up. In normocytic, normochromic, that means hypoproliferative, normocytic, normochromic, low index. We should work up for iron deficiency along with anemia of chronic inflammation, ruling out other causes like renal diseases or infiltrative bone marrow diseases. And coming to the bone marrow, in this normocytic, normochromic, hypoproliferative anemia, bone marrow will not have any erythroid hyperplasia. ME ratio will be 2 or 3:1. In these two types of anemias, maturation disorder and hemolysis, there will be erythroid hyperplasia with ME ratio less than 1:1. And whatever all said and done, we have only looked at the branches. The root cause of anemia in liver disease is always liver disease. Our approach should always be liver centric. And I end my lecture with this, and I'll take up any questions if you have.